I'm Jeff Goodman, and welcome to another edition of Good and Plenty on the CLNS Media Network. Remember, you can subscribe on iTunes. You can give a review, rating, comments. It all helps us. Find us on iTunes, Stitcher, CLNS Media. Today's guest, we've got former NBA GM of the world champion Cleveland Cavaliers, David Griffin, who's been doing some TV work. And Griff's a guy who I've known a long, long time and as insightful as it gets. So without much further ado, here's David Griffin. All right, Griff, you should feel honored. This is the first podcast since I've been doing it that I do not have my knee up iced in a game-ready machine. I'm down to a cane. I'm in week 7 of recovering from my knee injury, MCL tibial plateau fracture. So I feel good. I hope I sound good, and I'm ready to go here.
You sound good. I don't know if I'm honored, though, because I'm not sure anybody's going to give me the credit for the turnaround. It's not like the pending call with me miraculously sent you in the right direction.
Listen, an Arizona guy is never going to give an Arizona State grad any credit, first of all.
I understand. It makes a lot of sense to me. I'm a traitor to both schools. I get it.
You really are. You really are. So what have you been doing? You've been out a year. I see you on TV a little bit here and there. You look good. I think you're leading the life, though. I think you're probably traveling, having some fun. What the hell have you been doing the last year?
Well, sadly, I haven't been doing all that much in terms of leading the life. I've been on NBA TV twice a week, basically, since January. And then I did a bunch of their draft coverage. I did their free agency stuff as well. I really, really like the folks there. Turner's been a lot of fun to work with. They run it like a family, which I appreciate from a team building perspective. So that's been good. Done some consulting with prospective owners as well. So that's been fun. But my wife and I moved in October to Sonoma, California.
Nice.
Her business is sort of designed around the marriage of wine and wellness, which was her education in strength and conditioning and wellness. So we made 16 years of our marriage about my career, and now we're making it about hers, and it's been a lot of fun.
Man, you left Cleveland for Sonoma? Come on.
Hard to imagine. It's really unbelievable. Yeah, it's
so
that
does
much
this mean you're a
sunshine
big
and that
wine?
many 80-degree days.
Are you a big wine guy? You have to be a big wine guy, I bet.
My wife is actually really well educated in it, and she knows what she's doing, and I say, yes, that's really good. I'm not educated, and I know what I don't know. I know what I like, and typically she makes the selection, and I roll with it.
All right, what's your wine, though? If you have a go-to wine, I'm going to put you on the spot here with your wife may listen to this. What's your go-to wine?
WAUGH, W-A-U-G-H, Pinot. They do a Pinot Noir that's awesome. Ryan and Crystal Waugh are the owners and winemaker there, and it's just a great place. They're at the caves at Soda Canyon.
Nice.
And could not recommend it more highly.
Nice, a little plug for Waugh. I like it. All right, let's get down to business.
You asked, man.
What's that?
You asked.
I know.
I got to take
listen,
advantage
why not,
of the
right?
opportunity.
All right, so we've given a plug to Arizona State here, Bobby Hurley, a little bit to my injury. Now we're going to move on to some real stuff and free agency, and I guess we'll start with LeBron. It makes sense, certainly with your background.
Sure. Yeah.
Were you
Nobody
surprised?
knows my name if it's not for LeBron, so let's start there.
That is a good point. You probably wouldn't have had your job. What was your reaction? And were you surprised at all to see LeBron leave Cleveland for LA?
No, I sort of anticipated it, that he was very likely to leave. And I think LA was the most likely destination. At one point, I was probably 60-40 he leaves versus stays. But as the season went along, I think it became fairly evident that his family and everybody else around the team were sort of disengaging and creating some distance there. And I think people within the organization could feel that, and certainly the things I was hearing, it didn't surprise any of them either. In terms of LA, I think it was always going to be that if he went somewhere else. And a lot of it, they're making a lot about the notion of what he was sold in terms of the nature of the team building style. I think it had far more to do with the off the court issues. And that's the mystique of the Laker franchise, the aura that it is to restore that, what it would do for his legacy to restore that. franchise to greatness, and then obviously what he's able to do from a movie production company standpoint. They've already been wildly successful in that area, and I think it's an area that as he continues to grow and evolve, that's really going to take the bulk of his time once he's done with basketball.
So if you were the GM still with the Cavs, you don't think anything would have been different?
No, I don't look at it like that, because once one thing changes, everything's different. So the whole thing, it's all a series of interconnected events. So
Sure.
From the time I'm gone, there's a lot of things that connect one way or the other. And I just don't think you can look at it in those terms. I think LeBron was looking at this from the very beginning, and that's why he did a series of one-year deals. He gave LA a 4-year commitment. That makes team building and building in a sustainable way a radically easier process for Magic and Rob. When you're constantly building to win just one championship, it's a totally inorganic process that can't sustain itself. And so I think ultimately this commitment that he made to the Lakers being 4 years, that's the only part of this that was surprising and really is significant, I think.
A lot's been made recently of LeBron and Kyrie's relationship, and maybe their lack of relationship. Report comes out that Kyrie really didn't want LeBron coming back in the first place, that he felt you guys didn't need LeBron, which, man, whatever it was in 2014, I think you won like 35 games. You certainly seem to need LeBron to me.
Well, we've been to 4 straight lotteries. So,
there you go. Yeah. Listen, I like Kyrie. Don't get me wrong. I'm here in Boston. I love his talent, but sometimes he baffles me with what he says. And again, this is a report. We don't know exactly what was going on there. You had a better idea than most of their relationship and what it was like. Could you sense that Kyrie was frustrated with not being the guy? And did you try to mend any fences between the two throughout, the end there?
Well, let's start from the beginning. So I'm really close to Kyrie, and I believe deeply in Kyrie as a human as well, and feel the same about LeBron, obviously. And when we met with Kyrie, I took over in February of the previous year, 14, basically, let's see, it would have been the 13-14 season. So I took over in late January of 14. And the number one goal for me was to build a relationship with Kyrie such that he wanted to stay with the organization and believed in what we were building. And he was our number one job in free agency that year. We met with him on, at midnight on the lifting of the veil of free agency. He was our number one target. And we had myself, ownership, his father, his agent, all together. Ty Lue was there. There's the assistant coach, or the associate head coach, rather. David Blatt was there. We had dinner in New York, and it was a significant moment for us that he chose to re-sign when he did, because he bought into the direction of the franchise. And at that dinner, we talked about free agency and the players we wanted to target, the players that I thought were the right fit for him, kind of replicating what we had done in Phoenix around Steve Nash, creating a ball-dominant play creator with shooters spacing the floor and a dynamic rolling finisher. And so we targeted people that would fit all of those situations. And Kyrie led the recruiting of all of those guys and was absolutely involved on a day-to-day basis for making sure that the guys that we were targeting and that he knew well wanted to come, and he landed every one of them.
Okay.
And the issue was that everyone was in a holding pattern waiting for LeBron to make his decision. And obviously, if LeBron's willing to come home, you're taking LeBron.
Yes.
And you want LeBron. But because everyone was waiting, eventually we ended up losing options. And so when LeBron finally made his decision, there was really only one option left, and it was him. And we had him on the board as the guy. We didn't even have his name up there because we really didn't imagine that he was coming back that year.
You had him on the board as the guy.
The guy. And everybody else was up there by name. And we didn't envision he was going to come back that year. We thought he would want to take a year, see if our front office was able to start to turn the corner, again, replicate more of what we had done in Phoenix, and see if he believed in that. And fortunately, he believed in the direction that we sold them from the very beginning in terms of what we could do in the immediate future. And so he made the decision to come back. But that meant Kyrie went from being the man on a team he recruited every member of to he is now going to be second fiddle to the greatest player of his generation. Well, that's a radically different life experience for Kyrie. So when you spend a summer feeling one thing's going to happen and then something else happens, that's hard. And so I think that was,
especially for a young kid,
emotionally. Yeah, for sure. And this is the kid who hadn't even been put in a position yet where we were trying to put the burden of winning on his shoulders, because all we were doing was going through the process without the rhetoric. Yeah. And we had done that for 4 years on purpose. We got Kyrie with a pick that was actually a Clipper pick that we had received in a trade. So we had been building very mindfully to create this space and to create the treasure trove of assets that we had. I called the original phase of what we did asset accumulation mode. And so that's all he had been there for. So to go from, okay, kid, flip the switch, you're going to play with the greatest player ever, and we have to win a championship this year, or you fail. Yeah. That's not easy. Yeah. And so I don't think people really understand the totality of how profound that would have been on a great young player who still hadn't figured out how to be the reason you win games. So he didn't have friction. I traveled with the team more than almost any general manager in the league because our fit and our chemistry and camaraderie, building a family that loved each other enough to tell each other what they needed to hear, was my number one goal. And it was the only thing that mattered, because when the margin for error in winning a championship is as slim as it does, if a guy has 2 bad days in a row on a human level, that's a problem. Yeah. So I spent an inordinate amount of my time really having my finger on the pulse of where the team was spiritually. And Kyrie and LeBron didn't have drama as individuals. They could laugh and joke and make fun of each other just like everybody else on a team. But there was more and more friction in the process in terms of, or in the system rather, in terms of how we go about winning games. And it became really evident to Kyrie that he wasn't going to have the template from which to find out how great he can truly be, because he wasn't going to have the ball enough. And when you're trying to be a point guard that makes other people better, that can be complicated. And so I think once we won the championship, it became clear to him that maybe he was going to need to do something else. And then once I was gone, I think it became clear to him that he probably wanted to execute that plan sooner rather than later. Yep. And I think he handled his side of things exactly right. He asked for the trade quietly. It's not his fault it became public. And it became public because it wasn't handled terribly well on a lot of different levels, which wasn't his fault. And so he became vilified when in reality it had nothing to do with getting away from LeBron. It was, look, I'm a 24, 25-year-old kid with a wealth of potential who's already been an Olympian, a gold medalist, who's already won an NBA championship, who made the biggest shot in Cleveland history. Okay, I've done that thing. Now let me go see how good I can really be.
And he didn't feel like he could do that playing second fiddle.
No, and he didn't. It's not that he didn't feel he couldn't. He couldn't. Nobody could have become a ball-dominant play creator who makes other people better in the presence of the single most efficient ball-dominant play creator in history. That's not how you get to be given the opportunity and force-fed the opportunity to fail trying to make a team win. People really lose sight of how important it is to fail and to continue to fail when you're trying to learn something new. If you go out there and you try to make everybody better and you still win the game and it doesn't matter what you do, that has a much less significant impact on your ability to truly find the frequency that is winning in everyone you play with. Yeah. Kyrie had to do this for the sake of himself as a basketball player, and it had much less to do with his relationship with LeBron. But it's not as sexy a story, so we focus on the relationship, as though somehow it would matter more if we said, oh, they hated each other. Okay, well, let's pretend that's true, and it's not, but pretend it is. Now what? Why is that more interesting than somebody recognizing they have true greatness in them and wanting to find it?
Well, I think part of it, too, is Kyrie has, you certainly hear it and you've seen it, he's matured over the years. This wasn't the most mature kid, and most aren't coming out of college after one season. but he's certainly grown over the last few years. Wouldn't you say that's extremely accurate?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and any of us did from 19 to 24. There's no question. I mean, think about the fact that he played 11 college games and he came into the league as a 19-year-old who basically was coming right out of high school in terms of the ball he played healthy in his life.
Right. No, you're right.
That's complicated in and of itself. So I think way too much was made of the relationship and far too little was made of what's the object lesson and what can we learn from a team building perspective such that these two guys want to play together forever. And what could I have done better to bring that about? What could our coaches have done better to bring that about? There's an object lesson there.
Griff, I think ultimately the thing that most people think about is why the hell would you ever want to leave an opportunity to play with the greatest player and chance to compete for an NBA title every single year? That's inherently what I thought right away, because we didn't know he would end up at a place like Boston where he would ultimately likely have a chance to compete for titles again. He might have ended up, he didn't control where his destination was, and he could have ended up at a lottery pick again, a lottery team. So I think that's
right,
the
but I
question.
I think that's possible. But again, not everybody's wanted to play with the best player of his generation either. People have had the opportunity to join forces and didn't. When people have true greatness in them, sometimes they want to be the one who's dictating outcome.
Yep.
And there's a reason LeBron didn't get Paul George to go to LA immediately. Paul was really connected to the experience of Oklahoma City because spiritually and psychologically, he and Russell connect. Russ is an alpha, and Paul really isn't.
Right.
And that's a great fit. And Paul would have been a great fit with LeBron. Well, if Kyrie envisions himself as an alpha and LeBron's an alpha, and I can't have the ball enough, the worst thing you can possibly do, and this is where I spent a lot of my time, the worst thing you can possibly do is say you can do this and then sink us from within. If you can't be over yourself enough to be part of winning, and that's all you care about, just say it, and that's fine. Like there's no judgment here. That's fine. But don't sink us from within. And so I gave Kyrie a lot of credit for just saying, listen, I think there's a better expression for my game somewhere else.
Well, certainly he's got that opportunity in Boston and a team that, once you get him back healthy and Gordon Hayward, and now you see what Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Ad Horford and Rozier, this may be the team that's most likely, I don't know if anybody's likely to dethrone the Golden State Warriors, but I mean, do you think the Celtics are probably, on paper at least, until we see this team play together at full strength, the one that's probably got the most opportunity to take Golden State deep?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're buying finals futures, it's funny. I was talking to somebody about this morning. If you're buying finals futures, you're buying Golden State and Boston.
Yeah.
Those are clearly the two best teams in their conferences, and I think the teams that everybody assumes will eventually meet. I think if all the stars aligned for Boston and their guys were able to come back completely healthy, and they could have that same level of beholdenness to one another that they had last year while being beleaguered and injured, I think they could absolutely be the team that pushes Golden State the hardest in a finals. But I'm not entirely sure that that's any more than the gauntlet Golden State's going to have to go through in the West to make it to the finals.
Yeah, no, you're right. Listen, if I just think Houston, it's very, and I'm going to ask you this question. For me, the most underrated move of free agency is Houston losing Trevor Ariza. What's your most underrated move for free agency?
Yeah, I would have said the exact same thing. And it's not necessarily that Phoenix got him, which is a plus for Phoenix.
That's right.
But it's the loss that it creates in Houston. It's the vacuum that it creates in Houston from a leadership perspective, which was really critical there. And then the other thing that I would say is an under the radar situation is Clint Capella's not a happy camper.
Yeah.
And when you're when you're a guy who is identified by doing all the little things that contribute to winning, if spiritually you're not of that moment all the time, it's really hard to be the full bandwidth of who you are as a player. And so I think it would be concerning to me if I were Daryl Morey to enter the season with him being less than enthused. Now, again, that's only what we hear. We don't know that to be true. But if he is not completely bought in, that could be one of those things where they got weaker from within.
Isn't that the case, and you've dealt with it a ton, with most of these restricted free agents at the end of the time? I mean, Marcus Smart's going through it here in Boston because he was offered $12 million a year ago, didn't take it, thinks he's going to get $12 million again, thinks some other teams are going to at least, sign him to an offer sheet of 10 or 12 million. And right now the Celtics are just kind of waiting out to see what the market sets itself out for Marcus Smart.
Yeah, I think it's a little different with Marcus because I think Marcus understands that organization fairly well and he knows what they're all about. And I think, again, spiritually, Marcus is sort of identified as the emotional center of that team, sort of the ballast of that team. Yeah. So I don't think it's quite as profound a situation because he really does understand it. I think what becomes really meaningful for Marcus Smart, and I'm sure his representatives have experienced this as well. A guy like Marcus Smart is only truly valued and appreciated on teams that are playing for something really meaningful. Because in the absence of that, you're going to talk far and more about what he can't do to put you into really meaningful moments. But once you're in really meaningful moments, all you talk about are the things that he does to enable you to capitalize on those moments. So I think that's the issue he runs into. There was no cap space to begin with, and bad teams with cap space aren't going to give it to a guy who can't really be the great extent of who he is, which is just a natural winner.
No, he's a great piece. He's a great piece and a great defender. And like you said, he's kind of the heart and soul, the toughness of that Celtics team that has more than just him for toughness. But all right, the big story that's still hanging over everybody's heads here in the NBA is Kawhi Leonard. R.C. Buford, what do you do right now? Put yourself in kind of his shoes. And how do you handle this, Griff?
No, thanks.
Yeah, I know you don't want to deal with this one. I don't blame you.
I don't wish this on anyone.
It's a tough deal, is it not?
Yeah, it is. And again, you're talking about an organization that for 21 straight years has not bowed to pressure. They ignore the noise at a very high level. They're not going to be nervous from anything that circulates in the media or anything else. And I said before they ever met, listen, this isn't a real thing until they sit down and Kawhi looks in Pop's eyes and tells him he doesn't want to be there. Now we're told that's what happened. We don't really know, and Kawhi's never said anything personally.
And he never will.
But assuming they are going to trade him, the reason that I said I didn't want to trade places with R.C. Buford is not only are you trading a guy who was first-team All-NBA and a Finals MVP, you're trading a guy who's coming off not being healthy.
Yep.
So everyone that is going to make offers for you believes it should be a fire sale because he's, quote, going to leave anyway, and he's not necessarily healthy. So what you may see San Antonio do, because they deal in value propositions always, they want all of the optionality, they want all of the value. They're not going to make a discounted deal, so that may mean they have to take him into training camp and let him prove he's healthy so that the type of Godfather offer that they would trade him for actually is forthcoming. And I don't know that if I were at a team that had the assets to get him, I would feel good about making that kind of offer until I watch him play. Because you're talking about a guy who didn't have surgery. He didn't have something that has a clear timeline for recovery to action.
Right,
and he didn't play. Yeah. And it, quote, didn't feel right after other doctors said he could play. So I'm going to want to see him play before I put all the assets in the center of the table.
So if you don't, are you saying, hey, we need medical information now? We want our doctors to be able to look at Kawhi before we make this trade? Are you not doing it otherwise?
I personally can't imagine any team would give up the type of high variance assets it's going to take to get Kawhi without some assurance of his health. be that he comes in and our doctors get to see him and I get to watch him run up and down. I mean, again, this is more meaningful than my doctors look at him. And this is why our season's such a terrible position. This is not my doctor looks at him and clears him. This is he says, okay, it feels right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
and you want to
how
see
do
him.
I know?
Right. You want to see him play.
I want you to show me it feels right.
So you're saying San Antonio might be best to show that Kawhi's healthy, but the problem is getting Kawhi to actually go on a court in a Spurs uniform again might not be that easy.
Yeah, and again, I think it wouldn't be easy for any other organization that wasn't this organization, because the perceived drama around that happening would cripple and paralyze a lot of other decision-making groups that worry about things like that. There are very few teams in all of sports that can keep their eye on what really matters as well and as acutely as the Spurs. And because of that, I think they could pull this off. I'm not saying that they should. I'm not saying I would want to. I think they might have to, because the kind of offers they're looking for aren't going to be forthcoming.
Interesting. All right, last thing, and I'm going to let you go. Kind of a weird one off the cuff here, but you're commissioner. You're Adam Silver. What's the first thing that you're changing with the NBA?
Yeah, it's this is funny because I actually saw Adam Silver yesterday.
What did you pitch to him about?
For me, the most important thing, and we've talked about this in the past, and we didn't talk about it yesterday, but I think the most important issue right now facing the league is that in a superstar-laden league in which 14 of the 15 best players by wins above replacement are playing in the Western Conference, if we're going to help sway the balance to where you have a chance to compete on a level playing field in small market Eastern Conference situations, or frankly, even big market Eastern Conference situations, if we don't level all of the exceptions, anything that's a max contract, a mid-level exception, taxpayer, room, all of those things, if we don't level that for taxation within states, we are giving an unbelievably disproportionate advantage to teams in Florida and teams in Texas that really it's completely unfair. The spending power and bandwidth that you get out of mid-level in Cleveland, Ohio, or Detroit, Michigan, or New York City is completely different than that spending power in those other locations. It makes no sense. It can't be that hard to have somebody it can't be that hard to have somebody that the Players Association and the league can accept as an expert on taxation tell me how to level the playing field.
What did Adam say when you brought that up?
He's agreed it's a meaningful concept, but it's not something the owners have jumped on board with in terms of wanting it to be on the agenda. And I think a big part of the reason for that is one of the most vocal owners in the league is in Texas, and they have the advantage. So why is he going to bang the drum for that?
Yeah, but he's one of 30. I mean, what about the 20 some odd that would benefit by having that in place? I mean, I know Cuban's vocal, but he's one guy.
Again, until Adam believes it to the core of him that it's having any impact, he's not going to push the agenda. And typically, the NBA is very slow to change. Now, the one thing I will say is Adam Silver and Michelle Roberts have done, I think, the best job of any league in sports of reacting to the wants and desires of our fans and not making our thing move, our organization of the NBA move at a glacial pace. But this is something that I think is just profoundly significant. To me, it's infinitely more important than having the top 16 play each other or the balanced schedule or any of that. I think this is a really significant problem.
Listen, I'm with you. I'm with you 1,000%. It's way more important overall than those, or even to me the draft lottery. We're talking about all-star game and putting the top. I mean, come on, like there's issues that are meaningful, and then there's other secondary issues that people like to talk about because I I don't know why they even like to talk about them, because they're not very important. They're not important because we need to talk about something, I guess, is the biggest thing.
Sure. I mean, it keeps you and I occupied, right? I mean, it gives us an opportunity to create fan interest. And I think, to me, what dictates a great story from a media perspective is different from what dictates a truly profound issue. Yeah. And that's why it doesn't become meaningful, because it's not always a great story. So the fans don't clamor for it. So then owners don't feel pressured to do it. It's always been an issue, but the fans just didn't identify it as being meaningful to them.
Well, listen, I appreciate you jumping on board. Good luck getting back out of the media world and back in the world that you're more comfortable. You're a little bit better. Won the title in 2016, went to the finals 3 straight years. So good luck getting in there. I know you can't talk about it, but I'm hopeful that you will get that Philadelphia 76ers GM job. And if you do, just keep using those communication skills that you used in Cleveland and try to get all those guys on the same page. All right. And,
well, I appreciate it. I got to be honest. I'm in no hurry to venture into anything different. You know, I'm truly, I feel blessed to get to do what I do and do it with great people. And it's been really a positive experience for me. So if the right opportunity were to present itself where we could run something in a holistically sustainable way, I'm really intrigued by that. But I'm certainly not trying to create an opportunity at this point.
No, why should you? You're out in Vegas. You can hit the blackjack table. You can sit by the pool. You can do whatever you want. You go to the Summer League games. You can sit by the pool. Whatever you want.
But see, I would have been doing that if I was at a team. I would have just been spending someone else's money.
All right, Griff. I appreciate it, my man. We'll talk soon. All right.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right. Take care. Interesting comments there, certainly from David Griffin on Kyrie Irving and his desire and why he left LeBron James. Plenty of other news. It slowed down in free agency, certainly, but you got free agency, Summer League. And to me, the biggest story in Summer League, Harry Giles. Great story. You know, this kid's had 3 major knee injuries, was the number 1 player in the country in high school. Yes, over Jason Tatum, over everybody. He looked to me like he was going to be a Chris Webber, an Alonzo Mourning, that type of player. Came back from his first torn ACL, maybe better than before, then suffered a second torn ACL, first game of his senior year in high school at Oak Hill, then had another injury at Duke, was never able to really find his groove at Duke and feel comfortable. Sat out all of last season. Rookie season at Sacramento, sat out. I saw him actually, he was there supporting his buddy Jason Tatum in the playoffs in Boston. And he's always upbeat, but this is a kid that you're worried about, more mentally than anything else, because he wasn't what he was back when he was kind of that dominant force in terms of how hard he played and how athletic and long and powerful, all of that. And now he's played a couple games, and you know he doesn't look like himself, like the old Harry Giles, but he looks damn good. He's certainly playing a lot of minutes, playing hard, still smiling like he used to, and he's been more impressive than Marvin Bagley so far. And I think he's a better, if he didn't get hurt, I think Harry Giles is an NBA All-Star and a perennial NBA All-Star if he stayed healthy. All right, thanks for joining us on Good and Plenty, latest edition. Thanks to David Griffin for coming on from Vegas, getting out of the casino or the gym there at Summer League. And be sure to subscribe again, iTunes. We're on CLNS Media, Stitcher, and give us your comments. Give us your whatever it is, good, bad, indifferent. I want to hear from you what we can do to improve this. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and we'll be back every Tuesday with an NBA edition. And again, as the season gets closer, we will add a college edition of this podcast every Thursday as well. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.